Just had a thought this morning I wanted to share with you all about truth and imagination, and the fact that our maybe material world and the world of ideas, let's say, exists on perpendicular tracks. So what do I mean by that? Emanuel Swedenborg, who is a theologian and philosopher, mentioned that the spirit world exists perpendicular to our material world. And that's something I didn't really grasp on a conscious level. But this morning, as I was waking up, which is when I often have my some interesting thoughts, at least, to digest for the rest of the day, I felt like I saw that my dream was happening perpendicular to the landscape of my bedroom. And it got me thinking about truth and imagination. So we tend to pursue ideas that resonate with us, which might be career aspirations. For instance, I wanted to be an astronaut. However, you can't really follow through with those goals in a purely imaginative sense. At the same time, I was probably 5 years old when I wanted to be an astronaut, so I did not have the real support or training to pursue this life goal. At the same time, we, as business people or creative individuals, often have goals that don't really line up with what we are doing, which is a natural learning curve, I think. The biggest warning I would throw out there is that what comes along with this learning curve is self-imposed disappointment. So it's one thing to have a vision board for a house that you really aren't working toward, thinking I'd like to have that, or an idea of everything's going to be okay because I'll get this record deal someday. But it's setting you up for a lot of heartache, I think. And ultimately, both of these paths are true sort of destiny or life path, and this imaginative fate both begin with or start in or housed within the self or the heart or the purest part of our minds. So that's what I think confuses us, is that they seem to be coming from the same place. I'm reminded of John Henry Newman's psychological discovery of the illative sense. You could also research Carl Jung. This is basically intuition, which our empirical, at least Western contemporary culture, has trouble digesting. But it's a real phenomenon. We get this feeling. Some of us experience love at first sight, which, obviously there's some thoughts to unpack with that, but you see something that you're attracted to, or someone that you have a connection with, and from that point forward, you are willing to do whatever it takes to make that work. And business success is no different. You might have this aha moment of, I would love to do that. But it can't stop there. Regardless of how enthusiastic you are with that initial thought, it's still in a speculative realm. So we have got to take things from our imagination and make them true. So I think they start at the same place, but we might notice that if we feel bogged down, if we have this emotional baggage, if we're constantly disappointed in the lack of milestones we're hitting, that maybe what we expected was not true to fact after all, even though you might be getting closer to what you're ultimately meant to do, your purpose, which gives you meaning in life. I think you're going to encounter this. This is the higher learning curve of not letting failures stop you. I think we fine-tune as we age. And as we age, I hope we strive for wildly imaginative things less. I think it's a younger person's crutch to be paralyzed by unrealistic delusions, and they seem so real, so it's understandable. You might want to, I want him to be a famous musician, which sounds goofy saying it right now, but I didn't have the connections that I needed, and even when I played my biggest show, which was the Sweetwater Music Hall in San Francisco, where some of my idols like Elvis Costello have played, I was actually left with a lot of thoughts and feelings to kind of sit with, because being across the country away from my family was pretty uncomfortable, and I wanted to feel a sense of accomplishment that didn't take so much of a sacrifice for so little of a payoff. And I'm sure some musicians are, swimming in money, but by and large, and this is just, an allegory or example, that you have to be one in a million. Your talent has to be far above and beyond the common musician to fit into this small sect of chosen few. At the same time, you can, with much less stress, much more support from your loved ones, family and friends, start your own operation, basically a business, wherein you're able to have a home base, you're able to tactfully build out your life in a way that doesn't create disturbances or disrupt your important life connections. And that's, if there's one thing that I would want to teach someone, it's this type of work-life balance, which is, it's not only important, I think maybe it's the only thing we're in this life to really figure out. Truth and imagination. In an imaginative sense, you could call it like a reality tunnel. You're headed towards this thing you feel is so real, but there are things to look for. If your relationships are suffering, if you're staying up at night worrying, if you're not seeing the returns you think you should, there's a good chance that what you're going through is not, you might not be headed in the right direction exactly. So don't be afraid to pull back and reassess. Bring it back to your heart, your highest mind, your purest self, and think what really got you started along that thought process and career track to begin with.